on, and then you won't obviously like team meetings, you won't hear it in here, but I'm just gonna, yep, it's already kind of bouncing up and down there. So this will be your mic. All you need to do on.
So if there's somebody. Okay, okay, that's
that's on.
on, and then.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll wait for,
Afternoon. Sorry.
that's okay. I'll wait for Tasha to get in the room here. I don't know. Is Tasha in the room? I know she's doing something on the computer.
Karla,
Yes.
all right, I'm glad you're there.
Good. Yes.
We have one here, and I think we have another one on Zoom. I was gonna give it a couple of minutes, see if we have anybody else that's gonna jump on here.
Okay.
Let's see. I've got Ann here and Karla, and Miss Simmons was on. I don't know if she jumped off.
I,
But we'll go ahead and get started. Karla,
Okay.
when you're ready to jump in, just
Yep.
say, hey, I got a question, I want to add something, and I'll be checking in with you from time to time. We will
Right.
take questions as we go along.
Hi, Tasha. I'm here. Can you still see me?
Oh, I can see you now. Hey,
Okay,
Denise.
okay.
I can
Thank
see you now.
you.
No
Okay.
problem. So what we're gonna do, first of all, bulletproof your transactions so you can get paid faster. That's our goal, is to help you guys, one, bulletproof your transactions, one, meaning they're crystal clear when they get to Karla.
Yes. I can't hear you anymore.
I'm going to close the door.
Oh, okay.
Close the door, didn't take the mic with me. But
Oh.
one, we want to make sure our transactions are clean and clear once we get to the closing, right? And after the closing, and we're going to talk about some ways to do that. And some things that will help you through the transaction as you get to that point. One, from contract to close, what needs to happen? Who needs to be involved? What form should I be chasing or completing or verifying? Things like that. We're not going to go over forms word for word. We are going to talk about a few of the forms that will help you in this process. We're going to talk about the expertise that Karla brings to us in looking at what you've submitted in command and specifically telling you what you need to do to clean up your file or clean up a form or a form that's missing. That's an added advantage that a lot of offices don't have. So for us to use that and make the best of it, it's great. If you're not using it, not taking advantage of it, you're missing out on a great tool that we have here at KW Valentine. Okay, so. Karla, if you want to go ahead and tell them a little bit about what you do, that would be great.
Sure. Okay, my name's Karla and I work in the office, actually virtually. I'm in Ohio now, so but I am in contact with everybody all the time. And I check everybody's documents when they submit them in Command. And I check for accuracy, make sure that all the documents are correct, the correct document form and version of it. So, and then I let you know if there's something wrong. I'll let you know in detail what's wrong, and then you would correct it and resubmit. That's it in a nutshell. I'll go into that in more detail as we go along.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karla. And what I do, I consider the big associates. So I assist Sabre Romeo, who is our broker in charge, with a lot of the questions that you might have about specific forms or contracts or processes. I also head up the transaction partner group. If you guys need to know a little bit more about that, I'm happy to answer some questions after this session about transaction partner. If you're not in a transaction partner group and have not been in a transaction partner group, please get with me and let's talk about if that's something that would be beneficial to you. Okay, again, we're here to assist you anytime you're stuck in a situation or you're writing a contract after hours and you need a little help. Feel free to use those phone calls that have been provided to you when you signed up. My phone number, Sabre's phone number, your transaction partner leader's phone number, and in some cases, your coach's phone number. Okay, so keep those phone numbers handy. Make sure you have them in your phone. Pay attention to the schedules so that, you know, if somebody's out of town, you know, you can reach out to somebody else. Okay. So to get started on some of the items we're going to address today, I'll first take a look at our multiple listing service, because keep in mind what we're going to be addressing here is how to bulletproof your transaction, which means you now have a transaction. You're either the listing agent or the buyer's agent, or maybe you're co-listing with somebody, or you're working with a buyer and you guys are co-agents on the transaction. But at this point, you're under contract, you have a transaction. So one of the things I like to ask agents to do is make sure they're paying attention to what's in the MLS in remarks. Okay. If you have I guess I've clicked off of it. If you just went under contract, or you're going under contract, or you're looking to write an offer, pay attention to what's in the MLS in your remarks section. Sometimes there's instructions in there as to where you need to send the offer, where you need to follow up with questions. Some of these large firms or some of these out-of-state entities, you might send the offer to somebody here. They may want questions to go to somebody in Georgia or Texas. Read those remarks and make sure you're following the instructions and you're not causing your buyer to miss out on something because we didn't pay attention to the instructions in the remarks. Okay, if your buyer is thinking about writing an offer on a property that you saw this morning, and they need all offers in by 6 p.m. today, and your buyer says, let us sleep on it tonight. Okay, if you didn't read the remarks and know that, you can't share that with your buyer. Okay, so make sure you're reading the remarks, paying attention to the attachments. One, those attachments could include documents that your buyer needs to sign, documents that need to be submitted with the offer, and in some cases, documents that could disqualify your buyer, right? So if, let's say your buyer works at Wells Fargo and it's a Wells Fargo foreclosure, they may not be able to submit an offer on that property if they're an employee of that entity. So pay attention to the remarks, make sure you're adhering to the guidelines, and be transparent in sharing that information with your buyer or buyers. Okay. Karla, anything you want to add to that?
As far as, and are we still talking about the MLS?
The
In
MLS, disclosures and remarks,
Right. And when you're a listing agent, I'm still have to check that when you put the listing input under company remarks, please disclose if the seller allows dual agency.
Good point. Really
Okay.
good point. You have a question, Ann? Oh, yeah, she was saying in the company remarks on the MLS, what you need to make sure and do is indicate if the seller will allow dual agency. Okay, that tells us as other agents of the firm that Karla has a listing, and yes, that seller will allow dual agency. So we're okay in pursuing that listing if we have a buyer that's looking for that criteria, because the seller has already said they're okay with it. Okay. And that's one of the things that Karla has to check as part of your compliance, correct, Karla?
Yes, yes.
Great, great.
And I do send them back if the company remarks are not in there
If it's
for that.
blank, okay,
Yes.
good deal, good deal. Any other questions about that? Remarks section, disclosures on the MLS, all of this plays a part in making sure you're bulletproof your transaction. You're getting the information up front, you're investigating what needs to be investigated, and you're sharing that information with your buyer as you find out the information. Okay,
Let me tell you one thing on the MLS as well. When you put the document, the MLS data sheet in the command, please make sure it's the agent full view.
good
So when
point.
you go to print, it's the first one, agent full view, because we need to see all that information at the bottom of that document.
Absolutely, because we have an option to do a thumbnail, client
Yep.
view, client full view, but Karla, you're saying we need the agent full view.
Correct.
Good
Yes.
deal.
Okay.
Good point. Good point. So again, the MLS is one of the tools we want to use to make sure we're getting the information we need, sharing what is required to be shared, and in some of the cases, it's just good for the buyer to know. And then we've got KWB resources, which we're going to take a look at because we want to talk about some of the checklists, and then we'll move on to some of the processes and participants to the transaction. So let's take a look at KWB resources. And here you see we've got office resources, but what we're looking for are the checklists. So if you come down here, you see forms and checklists. We're just going to hover over office resources, click on forms and checklists, and then we'll sign in using our password, capital B, AMC 350. If you didn't have that, it's a good idea to write it down. Capital B, AMC 350. Okay. Now we see our general forms, our office checklist. So what we're looking for are office checklists. We just went under contract, right? So we're looking for a contract to close checklist. Doesn't hurt to look at these other checklists as well. Make yourself familiar, know that they're here. But for this purpose, we want to look at contract to close. I believe this is our contract to close. That's for sellers. And then we have one for buyers. Okay, so we've got two checklists out here from the contract to close, from beginning to end, beginning of the contract all the way to the closing table. We don't have time to go over each of these things you need to check off on, but know that these checklists are here. They're here to help you. One of the things you might want to do once you go under contract, if you know there's certain features of this form that you're not going to need, go ahead and cross it out. Okay. If you know the home was built in 2010, that you're not going to need a lead-based paint form, cross that out. You don't need that lead-based paint form. You don't need to look for it. Okay, but know that these documents are here. Know where to find them, how to use them, and use them to your advantage because they are a great tool in keeping you on task with what needs to be done from beginning to end of the contract. Okay, not necessary that you do everything every time, but know that the checklists are here and they're here to help you. We not only have contract to close checklists, but prior to going under contract, maybe you need to take a look at the listing checklist or the buyer checklist. Use these checklists to your advantage. They're great tools. That doesn't mean you still can't call me or Karla or one of your coaches to help you out if you get stuck, but know that the checklists are here to help you get started.
Sorry.
Any questions, anyone? No? Okay, everybody know how to get to the checklist on KWB resources. KWB resources, hover over office resources, then you're going to click on forms and checklist. And that will take you to your login. Your password is capital BAMC 350, and you'll go right into where I am now. You see, we've got checklists here in the middle. We've got general forms and then South Carolina forms. When you have some time, please go out there and take a look at those forms. Know that they're there. They're available for you. They're tools for you to use to make your life easier. If you find a form, you're not sure what to use it for, how to use it, how it can benefit you, give me a call, Karla, call, and we're happy to help you with that.
Yes, also, may I tell you, in the general forms, there's a lot of good documents in there, especially our W-9 form. So if you're sending a referral to someone, our W-9 form is in there, as well as the heritage.
Referrals?
Referrals, yep. The referral, pages, the documents. You have all of the like the septic and sewer form. Even though that's also in DocuSign, you can find it here, especially if you use .loop. The other thing I wanted to point out in there is the heritage, the title insurance selection form and heritage title. Those two forms are in there. So there's a lot of forms in there that you might need that you ask me people ask me all the time, where do I find those? Well, a lot of times they're in the KWB resources.
Yes.
So
good point. Really good point, Karla. And like Karla said, there's lots of forms out there. Maybe you don't need them every day or every week or even every month. But if you're looking for something and it's not in DocuSign, one, if it's an office form, it's most likely going to be here. There's a place for it in DocuSign that we'll talk about a little bit later. But if you ever can't find something in DocuSign or .loop, this is a great place to start your search if you've exhausted your search in .loop or DocuSign.
yes.
Okay. So that's where we have our general checklist, general forms, and then there's some South Carolina forms as well. Again, we don't have time to go through every form, and this is not a forms class, but we want you to know where to find the forms and make good use of those tools that have been provided for you. Okay. So parties to the transaction, let's talk about that a little bit. We are under contract. That's the scenario we're dealing with today. We've got our checklist. We're making our way through the transaction. One of the things I ask agents to do is identify the parties to the contract as well as parties who will be participating in the transaction. So we know the buyer and seller are going to be the parties to the contract, right? And then parties they need to work with or who you'll be in contact with could include your attorney, the closing attorney. Keep in mind, there may be two attorneys involved, right? If you're working with a seller and they've decided to bring their own attorney on board, then you've got another attorney to work with. You've got the lender to work with. best time to collect the information, contact information on these people is early in the contract, right? So if you received a pre-approval letter from your buyer 2 months ago and you're now under contract, one of the first things you do is share a copy of that contract with the lender, right? Follow up with the lender, make sure you have the lender's correct contact information. Go as far as to say, what are your work hours? Are you available on weekends? What's the turnaround time on appraisals? Things like that that will help you in, one, helping your buyer determine the due diligence, right? If it's a lender and they're doing a VA loan and they're telling you VA appraisals are taking 3 to 6 weeks, that may help you explain that to your buyer so they can make a strong decision about how much time they'll need for their due diligence, right? If they've got all of the buyer's information and say, hey, they're good to go, we can have them ready to go in 3 weeks, you know, maybe all you need to be concerned about is the inspection and negotiating repairs. But use that to help you educate your buyer on how much time they'll need for due diligence. And then now that you have that information and you're under contract, you're reaching out to the lender, sharing a copy of the contract. Hey, we're under contract. Here's a copy for you. Please contact me if you need anything else from me. Just building that relationship so that you can continue to move forward with the contract that you've recently delivered. Okay. As part of the contract, you're making sure you have all the necessary signatures, right? Verifying. Do I have husband and wife on the buyer side, husband and wife on the seller side? Is it a trust? Who needed to sign for the trust? Who's authorized to sign for the trust? Is it a power of attorney? Do I have that person's name and signature everywhere that it needs to be? Okay, verifying the contract, making sure you have what you need to move forward and so that there's no delays on the back end. Distribute the contract, inform the attorney, paralegal of compensation from listing agent, seller, and buyer. This is somewhat of a new one. You guys see I have the exclamation points after this. So what we've seen over the last 3 to 5 months is a bit of confusion as it comes to explaining to the paralegal or whomever in the attorney's office your compensation, especially on the buyer agent side. Okay, we know that all changed when it was no longer in the MLS. That happened about what, June, July of last year. So how do you tell the paralegal that the seller's paying you 2% and the buyer's paying you 1%? What's your process for making sure they know that? Are you putting it in an email? Are you completing a form? Is the paralegal sending you a form to put that on? Are you verifying what the seller or the listing agent indicated on their information sheet as to how much they were paying you? We need to verify all that to make sure what we've agreed to is what's going to happen 3-6 weeks from now. Okay, we have had agents who have missed out on anywhere from $3,000 to $4,500 because paralegal or the closing attorney didn't know that the buyer's agent was paying 0.5% or $5,000 or $3,200. So make sure you're getting that information to the closing attorney in whatever format they need it. It doesn't hurt to send it in the email. It doesn't hurt to pick up a phone call and say, hey, I sent over an email that said seller's agent is paying me 2.5%. Buyer is paying me 0.5%. Verify that with them via phone call, email, whatever you need to do to make sure you're on the same page. Any questions about that?
Yeah.
Karla, you got something to add?
Yeah, you can also send Form 710 if the amount that the seller is paying versus the amount you've put in your buyer's agency agreement. You can write that on the a Form 710 and send that to the attorney. That the buyer is paying the extra 0.5%.
Okay. Again, as part of you distributing the contract to the lender and the closing attorney. Make sure you're including that information. You have a fully ratified contract and you're on top of making sure it was received. Ask them, please confirm receipt. Mhm. Yes, we have a question on this end, guys.
Okay.
List of all the the people who will be receiving the contracts. Is there a somewhere in DocuSign where you can also send those documents to the lenders also as part of
Yes, you
DocuSign?
can send them via DocuSign or you can send them via email. It just depends. You can send them via DocuSign. However, it's usually nothing for them to sign.
Mhm.
So a lot of people will just send them via email
Via-
so that they can put in there,
Mhm.
my commission is X amount, this is X amount. So yeah, you can do that.
Mhm.
Okay. We had a question asking if it was okay to send the contracts to the lender and the closing attorney via DocuSign. And that's fine if you need to do it that way. I think the recommended process would be to email it to them so that you can provide any instructions. And it's a
Yeah.
ratified contract. Karla, go ahead.
Well, I was just, the chat room says that Sharon has pointed out that the emails are better easier to track.
Yes.
And I've also, when I've tried to send something through DocuSign to an attorney or a lender, sometimes I can't read them for some reason or can't open them.
Oh, that's
So,
a good to know.
yeah,
Good to
yes,
know.
I've had them say, just email it to me.
Yeah.
So email probably is the best way.
Probably is the best. You're right. Good points. Well, so under this KWB resources, important dates and timeline. My recommendation is that you have your timeline from the beginning of your under contract date all the way through due diligence and then all the way through the closing date. Okay, how you want to do that is completely up to you. Some people put reminders on their phone. Some have a daily planner and they have dates in there as to when they're going to follow up with the lender, when they're going to schedule the inspection. But make sure you've identified those dates. What's some important dates in the contract? When is the due diligence due? Immediately. When is the earnest money due? These are all dates that you need to share with your clients. Okay. What's the end of due diligence? When is the closing date? When should you get your inspections done? How many days do you want to negotiate repairs? So important dates for you to consider when you're talking to your buyer and your seller. Some agents get the mindset of, oh, I don't need to worry about those dates because I have the seller side. Well, no, the seller needs to know what's going on as well, because the seller needs to start making plans to either be out of their home. If they're negotiating repairs, they need to know, do I have somebody on standby that can take care of these, or am I going to give a credit? So you need to keep the sellers in the loop as well. Not just the buyer, because the buyer could lose their earnest money, but you need to keep both sides of the contract in the loop as to what's going on, regardless of what side of the transaction you're working. Any questions? Anything to add, anybody?
No.
Okay. Well, good deal. When we were looking at command, I'm sorry, when we were looking at KWB resources and talking about the checklist, there's some important dates and timeframes on those checklists as well, such as when should I submit my listing in command? When should I submit an under contract in command? Okay, so there's dates and timeframes on those checklists as to when you should submit your files in command. Okay, again, it's gonna give Karla time to review them, get back to you with anything that's missing. Give you plenty of time to track down a signature, an initial, an additional document. And speaking of that, we'll roll right into command and talk about some things that Karla does when she's in command. And she's going over all of the forms that she goes over on a regular basis and how it's to our benefit to have that. Karla, do you need me to
Yep.
pull up command or you want to just go?
I'll pull up my command.
Okay,
I'll share my screen. Oh, so it's gonna stop your screen
okay,
sharing.
that's right.
So you all should be seeing my command now. Is that correct?
Yep, we can see
Okay,
it. I can see it just
perfect.
fine. Thank you.
Okay, so in the in your command, you're gonna either pull documents from your DocuSign or .loop, or you're going to download them on your computer and upload them into command from that way, okay? So when you're in your opportunity, first of all, in your opportunity details, make sure the address is in here, even if you don't have one, obviously you can't do that yet, but for a buyer, but if
That would be for like a new construction.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
if you can put the address in, it makes it easier for Lynn and myself to look up the opportunity should we need it, okay? And then remember to choose the right checklist. Okay, so if you're listing a home in North Carolina, make sure you're choosing the North Carolina listing checklist. Okay. If you're doing a referral, choose that one. Or if you're listing a land, just land, because there's all different different placeholders, different documents you need for land versus residential. Okay.
Okay.
And if it's
Karla,
South,
can you, I'm sorry, can you get back and tell them a little bit about what it means to choose that and getting the placeholders that they would need for that specific transaction?
yes. So once you choose the North Carolina checklist, it'll bring up all of these placeholders over here. Okay, so that's in the listed folder. So in that folder, you're going to put all your listing documents. You're going to put the working with real estate agent and the exclusive right to sell. You're going to submit that within 3 days. So when you're submitting, there'll be a little up at the top right in this area. It'll say submit to MC. Click on that within 3 days of them signing their listing agreement and working with real estate agents. Okay. So the rest of the documents, and you'll see this on your checklists as well, will be within 7 days, at least 7 days before closing. And that way it'll give me time to check them and return them and have you correct them before closing, because you definitely don't want to go to your client or the seller or the other agent and ask for documents after closing. Okay. So so I'm in the North Carolina listing checklist, and I'm in the listed folder. Okay, it's over here, and it's it's highlighted.
You can see it.
Okay. And if you look in this column under requirement, you'll see that there's required, there's conditional, and then there's optional. All the ones that say required, obviously, are the required documents for a listing. Okay, so you have the working with real estate agent, the listing agreement, you have the property disclosures, everything that's needed for the basic transaction. Okay, if you use coming soon, if the page 5 of your listing agreement, you've got the public marketing, and then under here, coming soon advertising, if that's marked, if that has a check mark, it should have a date that's after the date here in the commencement of marketing. Okay, am I going in too much detail?
No, I think you're good. I think it's
Okay,
helpful
good. I
information.
didn't know if I was getting ahead of myself, but yeah. So if you do a coming soon, this commencement of marketing date, you're going to start marketing it as coming soon on what date? Okay. And then down here, it'll be checked. And the last sentence, the status of the listing shall be changed to active on whatever date you choose it to be active, but it has to be after the coming soon date. Okay. If it's one day, that's fine. If it's a week, that's fine. It just can't go over 21 days. Okay. So you've got those dates in there. Okay, so then that form would be conditional. If you wanted to know if it's conditional or not, that you need it, hover over that little I, the information bubble there, and it'll show you when you need it. Obviously, this one, if it's listed in coming soon in the MLS, you would need the coming soon form. Now, those forms are important that you get those filled out as soon as possible, because once they're signed by your client and you'll immediately send it off to Tasha or Sabra, because they have to sign that and they have to submit those to MLS, especially the firm exclusive. They have to submit those to MLS. Okay.
And Karla, just real quick,
Yeah.
And what Karla said is absolutely correct. The only thing I would add to that is, when you're having your listing agreement signed is the time to have your coming soon and firm exclusive form signed. Okay, we don't want to see listing agreement signed January 27th, and next Thursday you send us a coming soon form with a different date. Okay, we need to receive those all together, because at this point, we are having to verify that the listing agreement and the coming soon and firm exclusive form, they line up before we can sign them. So make sure you're collecting those all at the same time.
Yes. And that's a big thing that's been a big thing, because people are just waiting to the last minute and then getting them signed, especially by either Tasha or Sabra. So, and now they can't sign them because, they're getting dinged with with MLS. So, okay. Sabra has put the sample agency, and if they're underlined, that means you can click on that and the blank document will come up. So this is if you want to terminate a firm exclusive, and then add a marketing date or whatever. So that's what the sample is. Okay, so you don't really put anything in there. That's just for show. It's for a sample. But here again is the required property disclosure, and then the mineral oil, gas, and then septic and sewer. Now, I just discovered today, I think Sabra has added this utility bill at the property address for listing. I think I haven't heard, but I'm just going to assume that that's the best practice, is to get a copy of their most recent utility bill. If it's on city water and sewer, get their bill. And that's the best way to verify.
Yeah, it's really good to have that.
Yeah. Otherwise, I will look for, let me see, where is it? I will look for your verification. Here they just have it, the septic permit. And I like to see an address on it. I can sometimes make out. I know they're really old, some of these, so it's hard to make out, but do the best you can in getting those as clear as you can. Okay, so if you have a copy, if you've checked that a copy of the septic permit is attached and I don't see it, I'll send that back. Okay. All right. And then they verified, see here, the water connection is available and connected by Handy Sanitary. Okay. So just fill that out completely. Don't forget the property address because I get a lot of those that are back. Obviously, then if the house is built before 78, that's a condition. Some people like this security system disclosure. And that's fine. I'll look through that. But all these ones that say are required, then that's what I'm going to look for the most. The other thing I look for is in the offer to purchase. Here it is. If they're marked, my computer is a little slow. So if they're marked on page 11, so I look here to see if there's an FHA, additional provisions addendum, or any other addendum. And so I will make note of that on my little paper that I write all those little ticks on, and make sure that there's a FHA disclosure. Okay, so when you have the offer to purchase, if you do it or you get an offer to purchase for a listing, if those other additional documents are checked, and then I'll look for them. And then on the cooperative compensation, I'm looking, so this is a 2%. I'll match that up, make sure it matches with what you've added for the listing agreement. Okay, and if it matches, you're good to go. If it doesn't match, then you will need to come down here and do an agency agreement renewal, Form 710, to amend your listing agreement to match what you've signed on Form 220. Does that make sense?
Karla, I have a question about that.
Okay.
So if your listing agreement said they were paying the buyer's agent 2.5%, and your
Yes.
220 says 2.5%, and then you do an additional 220 that says the seller is paying the extra 0.5%, somewhere in negotiations, the seller agreed, that still requires an agency renewal form?
You should just have two 220s then.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to make sure of.
Yes. Yeah, you could have the two 220s.
Okay,
And then, yeah, you don't need to change your listing agreement then.
got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's basically what I'm looking for. Again, all the documents need to be signed, completed the right year. I just saw one this morning that was a 2020 listing or buyer agency agreement. And it's like 2020. So obviously I return that one. So make sure you're using, even with an offer to purchase, a lot of times you just kind of overlook the date that the agreement is. Make sure you're checking that. And if the offer to purchase is on a form before this 2024 form came out, make sure you just return that to the buyer agent and tell them to, or ask them to put it on the most recent form. Okay. So all the listing documents will go here in the listing, and all the under contract documents will go in the under contract folder. Once you've submitted the listing, submit it for review. And then once you have your under contract documents, maybe it's not all of them, but the ones that you have, submit it for review.
And
Okay.
Karla, when should they be submitting those for the listing documents and the under contract? What's our time frame?
Yes. So the listing documents, again, like the buyer agency or the listing agreement and working with real estate agent, you need to submit within 3 days of signing. Okay, and the other documents, get them in as soon as you can. Okay, this is before it goes under contract, obviously, for the listing. Okay, and then the under contract documents, again, you want to submit these, the offer to purchase and the cooperative, the Form 220, again, within 3 days of signing. And then all the rest of the documents at least 7 days before closing. Okay. So this one is submitted. If you notice up here, it's under contract version 2. Well, how did she come about that? So the first buyer, they terminated this contract. Okay, so she had pretty much all the documents, but then there's the termination form in here. Okay, so I asked people to, when that one's done and there's a new buyer, you need to get another under contract folder. And you do that by up here, you're in your under contract folder, right up here is a little down arrow. If you click on that, it'll say add version. Okay, you'll add a version and a whole new set of placeholders will come up. And that's where you'll put your second buyer's information in, all their documents in. Okay.
Any questions about that? I know we don't use it very often. Does everybody understand what she just said? If you need a new version, if your buyer had to terminate the first contract and you need a new version?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you have a document in here, a lot of times when you get your receipt of monies, page 17, you'll have one page that has the seller acknowledgement and then another page with the attorney's acknowledgement. So you can either combine those. I use, I think, Foxit Reader or something like that. I use, and it's really helpful. You can just combine those documents really easily. Or a lot of people will just add a document. So down here, you're going to add a document or add a placeholder. Okay. How do you do that? These 3 dots right here, up in that shaded area above the placeholders, click on those and then add a document. Okay. It's going to ask you the name and you can put EM acknowledgement or whatever that document may be. And then it's going to ask you for document type. And this doesn't really matter to me. It could be an addendum, it could be a disclosure, whatever. I don't look at that so much. But just pick one of those. It has to be one. And then either from DocuSign or .loop or your browser, click on the document and then upload it. Okay, then you would click save. And what would happen is it'll scroll all the way down and that document will appear down at the bottom. Okay. And the other thing is, if I've told you that a document was incorrect and you need to replace it, to replace a document, click on where that document is that you need to replace. Click here, right next to it, on those 3 little dots, and click update. Okay, and then that will update that document. What's going to happen is it will ask you why you're updating. You don't need to say that. That's just for your own records probably. And then put the corrected document in there and then click update. Okay, and that will say changed. Sorry. My watchdog. So anyway, that's how you correct a document. And that's how you add a document. How's
And
that?
Karla, as far as submitting, let me ask this question. I know, but I know a lot of the other agents may have not had transactions to know that. So if you send them something to correct at an initial to, a signature to, when they correct that, they have to submit again, correct? They have to submit that item again.
Right. Well, what will happen is, once you update it, it'll say changed, and then this will say changed.
Mhm.
So when I look at all of my documents, I click on the submitted ones, the resubmitted ones, and the changed ones. Okay, so I know 3 of them here have been changed. Okay, so that's how I know. So here is returned. Where is it changed one? Here's one is that is changed. Okay, so this is updated. So this is the one she changed. So all these others I don't have to look at again because I've already approved those. I'll make sure then what she's submitted was corrected and then approve it.
Right. Good deal.
Okay. And then I'll change that to approved when it's all, she still has some missing stuff, but. And then with your closed folder, of course, don't leave any open because I won't look at the open ones. Okay. And I've learned that from Sharon because I've checked a couple of Sharon's open folders, but she says, don't do that yet because I'm not done with them. So I don't do that anymore. But anyway, if you have an agreement to amend, that belongs in the closed folder. Okay. A lot of people add those to the under contract one down here. I will say add them to the closed folder. Okay. So make sure you're looking in another folder in case the document belongs there. As far as the closed folder goes, I always say, well, these are the documents that will go to the attorney, the agreement to amend, sometimes the due diligence will go. And then the termite letter obviously is from the inspector, but it needs to be in the closed folder, okay? Again, this should be submitted as soon as you have it closed.
Right. Right.
Okay, now, where are we going here? Where are we next?
Well, I think, well, you just talked about the placeholders, adding documents and
Yep.
replacing documents.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So let me just tell you what I do here. What you're going to do is look up, and you need to check these every day or so, you know, because I'm pretty caught up. But you'll look up here. If you look up next to your name and that little bell, if there's a red dot on there, that means you have a message from me. And I believe those messages also come to email.
It does. It
Okay.
does. Mhm.
So if you look up here, you can see all of these, the messages. Here's one.
Yeah.
So if I have a message on here, I'll just click on view message. And then that opportunity comes up.
Yeah.
And I can answer her question. If you want to tell me something specifically about your transaction, click add a comment. And remember to click the @ symbol. Otherwise, it goes wherever.
When should they click the @ symbol, Karla?
Yeah, click right there like that. And
Uh-huh.
then you can choose who you want to address.
Okay, and
And
then
then-
click, okay, so you do the @ symbol and then select the person that you're sending the message to?
Yep.
Okay.
And then that message goes directly to me. If you click
Okay.
my name, I'll see it right away. Otherwise, I'll just happen upon it when I'm looking at the documents.
Okay.
Okay?
And then Karla, just real quick, what they're looking for when it's a message from you, the email will say compliance, correct?
Yes,
It will say, so if they're searching for something, in their email, search
Yes.
for compliance, not Karla Kettler email, but compliance.
I believe so. Yeah. And then the other thing is when you do go and check your documents and you see the returned, you'll see this little dialog box. If you click on that box, it'll tell you what's wrong. So this should be the property disclosures, and she put something else in there.
Oh, the contract.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, additional provisions. She put another document in there that belongs in the closed folder. But I'm pretty specific as to what's wrong with the document. So if on the offer to purchase, let me see if I can find one. Here's one. Where does something, when I just saw? She must have been just missing something. Anyway,
Oh,
look,
there it is,
if on
missing.
the listing agreement, you have the wrong dates in the page 5, I'll put that down. I put page 5, number 10A is missing the active date or whatever. And so that's how you'll correct it. I'm very specific as to what's wrong and where it is. So hopefully it makes it easier for you to correct. Now, a lot of times there's 2 or 3 things wrong with a document. Make sure you're correcting all 3 things before resubmitting it. Okay. What else?
I think you've covered pretty much
I think
everything.
so. Yep.
Yeah, I know one of the big things that I talked to Saber about, and you've addressed it here, but just to reiterate, submitting your folders over here that Karla has referenced, your listing folder, your under contract folder especially, submitting those timely. And she said within 3 days, so that gives her time to verify. Are there any errors? Are there any
Right.
forms that were missed? Is there anything that needs to be corrected based on when it was put in the MLS? So submitting those timely instead of I'm closing tomorrow and I'm going to submit everything now, then some of those dates are
Yeah.
time sensitive. So you need to
Right.
submit those within the time frame as indicated on the checklist.
Yes.
Okay.
And then have we gone over, are you going over offers and commissions or am I?
We're gonna do that here in just a second.
Okay,
And
okay.
yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay.
So, thank you, Karla. That was good information. Any questions for Karla about the command process, submitting your documents, replacing a document, resubmitting, timeframes to submit? You want to see approved over here on all of your folders?
Yes.
And
Any correction or update you do for each document, do you constantly have to resubmit that or
No, it'll say changed and I check
Okay.
the changed folder. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't check the folders I don't check are the open ones. As you can see, there's 3,000 over 3,000.
And what does that mean exactly, Karla, open?
That means there's documents that somebody has created a transaction and there's documents in there, but they never submitted them for review.
Good deal.
So I don't check all those. Okay.
Okay. All
So,
right. Excellent.
okay.
Good job, Karla. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll jump back to going through the process from contract to close. One of the things I like to ask agents to do, I talked about a little bit before, who's a party to the contract and who's a party to the transaction. Once you've identified that, set up follow-ups for those, okay? How often do you need to follow up with the lender, the closing attorney? Do you have their contact information? Do you have their schedule? Are you working with somebody, say it's a paralegal and she's told you, I'm gonna be at the beach for the next 10 days. Do you know who his or her backup is? Okay, do you have inspectors that you're working with? And what's their schedule? What's their turnaround time on inspections? If you've got a short fuse on your due diligence and you get your inspection reports back the morning of the end of your due diligence period, it kind of cuts it short for you to have a discussion and research repairs and cost of repairs and things like that. So part of our job is to help the buyers manage that time frame. And if we don't know what the inspector's time frame is, it's kind of hard for us to help our buyers in adhering to that time frame. Buyers and sellers, we should be following up with our buyer or our seller. A lot of times it's not much to follow up with the seller on, but you do need to update them on what's going on with the buyer. When was the last time you spoke to the buyer's agent? What's going on with the loan? Okay, do you have a seller that's also buying? What's going on with that transaction? So it's our job to quarterback that whole process. And if it means writing notes, a notepad that you look at every day or notes on your phone, so that you're not 3 days before the end of your due diligence. Oh, I forgot to ask them if they want that second inspection. Okay. Or I forgot to tell the paralegal we want to close at 11 a.m. and not 4 p.m. on a Friday. Okay, so that's our job, to manage it, and communicating with the people involved with the transaction are going to help you do that. I just have these 4 listed here. There could be many more. So keep that in mind and make sure you have the contact information for those people. Folders in command, Karla addressed this. What folders there are, a few things I want to address. She said you might want to go in there and look at that folder or look at your command system once a day, once a week. I call that auditing your files. If there's something missing, is there something you need to have the buyer sign, the seller sign? Do you have a response back on your repair request? Okay, it ties into your follow-ups. When you're auditing, oh, I forgot to follow up with the lender to see if the appraisal is back. Is that on your calendar to do that? Okay, wire fraud reminder. Okay, we know that wire fraud is real. It has happened. It has happened here. We don't want it to happen again. So what we want to do is remind our buyers and our sellers, what is wire fraud? Wire fraud is real. Here's how we want to help you protect yourself. You know, don't send any money anywhere until you talk to the paralegal or myself. Okay, give them the phone number of the paralegal. Share that with them. Communicate with the paralegal and your buyers and sellers to make sure no money is changing hands until there's been communication. Okay. And wire fraud is real, and I'm not saying reiterate it to them one time. You talk about it when they sign the document, because that's part of the document. Remind them again once they go under a contract, and then remind them again or twice before they receive an email from the paralegal saying, hey, you need to bring X amount of dollars to closing, or hey, here's how much you're receiving at closing. Make sure you're having the conversation as often as need be to make sure we're protecting our clients and their money. Documents that you're looking for in each folder: consult folder, your listing folder, and under contract folder. In case you didn't notice, our buyer folder is now called the consult folder. So we're doing a consult before they go under contract. So that's our buyer agency agreement and working with real estate agent for a buyer. We already had the listing folder and the under contract folder. So add to that the closing folder for each, which again is covered here. We're going to address wire fraud. Verify that we have a closing disclosure, our commission check, and on each of those folders, as Karla said, this is what we're looking for. approval. If you have it under contract and you don't see approval on it, if you've submitted it, either something's missing, something's incorrect, or you have not submitted it. So approval, incorrect, or it's not been submitted. We want to see approval. That means you've done what you need to do. You're ready to go to the closing table. Same with your closing folder. Again, reminder of wire fraud. Your closing documents, and you want to see approval on that. When you see approval, you know what's gonna happen next. You're gonna get a check. You're gonna get a check. And then Karla's gonna tell us a little bit about how we do our commission request.
Yeah,
And Karla, please address a little bit how and when they should do this. We shouldn't be waiting until, oh, I have the CD now, let me do my commission request.
right, right. I know Lynn likes to have those as early as possible so she can go through them all. And it'll be ready when she gets the check then. So I always say, as soon as you know that nothing else is changing, the price or the concessions or something, then submit your commission request. So I would say you should be able to have that at least 7 days before closing as well. So on the commission request, I shouldn't have. Let me share my screen again.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, got it? You see my screen? Yeah, you should see it.
No, we don't see it.
You don't see my command?
Hang on. Okay, now try it.
We see it on Zoom.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
There it is.
Okay, so your commission request, this is very, very important because this is how you get paid. Okay, so once you have gotten everything's done in the listing and under contract folder, and you're pretty sure that nothing else is going to change, you can put your commission in. So you would click on the offers button, and it's going to give you a prompt as to, what the price of the house, how it's financed. I don't know about you, Sabra. You don't have to necessarily break these down. If most of it's going to be financed, this is an easy one because 5, you have to do math for this, so.
Yeah,
And
we don't
so
like
if
that.
I would just put all of it in finance amount, or if it's all cash, I would put it all in cash amount. Okay. You could do the breakdown or you don't have to, but anyway, it's going to ask you for the contract date and the close date. And then once you go through that and add everything that's needed, it's down at the bottom, it'll say accept. Once you accept that, then it'll prompt you to go to your commission. I can't do that with this guy. So let me find one. They usually have theirs. Okay, so he's accepted it, and then it'll say manage commission. I think it goes directly to the commission once you accept it. And then it'll look something like this. Just ignore the numbers and all that. It'll say general information, commission details, and then agent details. So you're just going to, again, fill everything out, just follow the prompts, everything with that red asterisk on it. These are the ones you need to submit. So you could put the right commission percentage in there. So this has an outside referral. If there is an outside referral, you would click an outside referral. So if you get a Zillow referral, put it in there, or a referral from another agent, not in our office, then you would put that in there. If there is another agent and you want to, I don't do these very often, so if there's another, like a co-broker, or if you're on a team and you do a commission, then you add either a co-broker or you can add an agent. Okay. And this is like a commission split. So here's where you add an agent. Okay, this is if you're like on a team or doing a co-listing or buyer, or yeah, I think this is for the inside referral, inner office referral. So just put the percentage. So this agent's getting 0.65, and then this agent's getting 0.35. Okay. 65%, 35%. Okay. And then that all does that for you. It adds it up for you. It'll put these royalties in that you need. And then if you want any deductions, do that. Fill that in. And any inside referrals, you can do that. But anyway, just follow along the prompts and then save the transaction. Okay, that way, then that goes to Lynn to prompt her to create that. It used to be a DA number. It's not really a DA number anymore. I think it's just called a transaction number. But then that way, once she gets her check, she looks in all those transactions, and then she can pay you. But this, you need to have this done before you get paid. So here's the ID number of the transactions. Okay, once you have them in there, and I don't know how she does it, but that's how you get paid. That's it. Any questions on that?
Sounds good to me.
Make sure when you complete the offer, though, that you go right to the transaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And then
And I
Karla,
already-
we have another message here, compliance messages from Karla. I think you've addressed that, but is there
Yeah.
anything else you want to touch on as it pertains to messages coming from you?
No, not really. I think I covered most of it,
Okay.
or as much as I could. So if anybody else has any questions, though, please feel free. You can email me. Any other questions?
Hear any on this end? Let me, anybody else have questions? No? All right, well, we're getting down to the wire here, a few things that and a few recommendations that we've received from lenders and closing attorneys for us to pay attention to in our transaction. Let me see if I can get back to my.
Yeah, I'll stop my share, and then you can
Okay.
share again.
Okay. There we go. So things from our lenders, paralegals, and different ones as it pertains to the processes. One tip that I got from one of the lenders or one of the closing attorneys, or no, this is from the lender. When the buyer and seller agree to a commission or a concession in lieu of repairs, it matters how you record it on the agreement. Simply adding the original amount of the seller's paid closing cost, then showing what the new amount of the closing cost is. They're recommending that we don't put in lieu of repairs. Said that causes the underwriters to question what the repairs are, and it could delay, and in some cases, it has caused the appraiser to go back out and take another look at the property for damage or for hazardous issues. So when it comes to concessions in lieu of repairs, the lender's recommendation is that if it's 0 and it's going to 5,000, just indicate 0 and the new amount is 5,000. Or if it's going from 2,000 to 8,000, old amount was 2,000, new amount is 8,000. Okay, addendums listed on page 14 of the contract. This is where we put, we used to be able to put information about commission or anything like that. This is where if you've added an addendum, they're saying send that over with the contract. That they're either gonna ask for it later and it could delay the closing. So it's best to submit it at time of submission. Additional provisions document, item number 4, repairs listed could hold up processing until repairs are completed. You should ask your lender how to handle such items. So we all know we can submit an additional provisions document with our offer. If you're submitting the offer and asking for specific repairs at that time, you have to submit that additional provision. And if it says $20,000 for a new roof, that could hold up the process. We're not saying don't do it, but make sure your lender is aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it so that you're not 2 days before closing finding out that the appraiser has to go back out. Seller contributing to buyer's closing costs. Verify with lender how much the seller is allowed to contribute. Okay, on some of the loans, maybe there's a specific percentage that the buyer has to contribute to their own purchase. So verify that with the lender. If you've done a great job of negotiating for the seller to contribute $10,000 to the buyer's closing costs, make sure the lender is in agreement with that. Okay. Appraisal, when to order it, who orders it, and should the buyer hold up on the order? If you know the value's there, but there's some concerns about the condition, maybe you have the inspection before the appraisal. Something for you to assess. Seller and buyer info sheet should be completed and back to the closing attorney ASAP. And when I say ASAP, within 1 to 2 days. Again, this goes back to us making sure we're including our compensation in there as well. If you're working with the buyer or the seller, you need to let the lender, not the lender, but the closing attorney know what your compensation is. Okay, if there's a 220 that you're sending over because the seller or the listing agent's paying 2.5% and your buyer's paying the other 0.5%, the paralegal and the closing attorney need to know about that 0.5%. Okay. Contact information for the HOA, very important. It could delay closing if there's a delay in getting the necessary information. For those agents who've been in the business for a while, you know what it can cause if the closing attorney can't make contact or get a response back from the HOA. I always say sometimes it's better to have your seller reach out to the HOA as well. Okay. You're working with an LLC, a trust, a POA, etc. Make sure you're working with an authorized representative. Is it the POA for the, elderly lady who has signed for me to be her POA or her daughter or anybody else to be her POA? There's a way you can ask for a power of attorney without sounding accusatory to the person who's saying they're the POA.
And that needs to be in the command as well.
Good point, Karla.
Yeah.
You guys hear that? A copy of the power of attorney?
Or trust or
trust.
Yeah.
Or if it's a business entity, is it an authorized representative that's signing for that business entity? And then common mistakes or omissions. I think Karla mentioned several, not getting all the signatures on all the pages. using an outdated form, missing information, not submitting your documents timely so that we are within compliance when it comes to our coming soon forms, our firm exclusive forms, waiting 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks to do that, we're way out of compliance by then. Any
And
other
make-
common mistakes you want to add, Karla, or omissions?
Yeah, on the listing agreement and the buyer's agency agreement, make sure you're adding the buyer's or seller's phone number, email, and their current mailing address. Those
Good,
3 have to be on there, not just 2 out of 3. All 3 need to be on.
good point, good point. Another thing I will add that's not on here is having an agent or somebody that you trust cover your business when you're away.
Mm.
If you're gonna be out of town or unreachable for 1 day, 3 days, or 10 days, who's covering your business? I get phone calls from time to time. I can't reach them. I don't know where they are. They haven't called me back. Should I go and get another agent? My response is, oh no, don't go and get another agent. I'm sure it's just a mix-up and we get it handled. But make sure you've got somebody to cover your business and share that information with Sue at the front desk so that if and when somebody calls, Sue knows who to send the call to. Any questions? Well, I think that's all we have today. Karla, do you have anything else to add, or does anybody have any
No.
questions that we didn't touch on that you would like to see addressed in this training?
Yeah, this is our first one doing this together, so
It is.
it's
I like it though.
I think
hope
it
you
went
guys
well,
do.
but if there's anything you guys have noticed or want us to cover, let us know.
Let us know, please do.
Mhm.
All right, well, thanks everyone. And again, like she said, send us a text, email, give us a call if it's something you want us to spend more time on. Or if you want us to add to it. Again, we're fine tuning it to try to have it mesh and flow smoothly as the process flows. But
Yeah.
thanks for attending, and we hope to
Thank-
see and hear from you guys next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
Oh, really good. I'm glad you got something from that. Good job. I'm glad you're.
It's overwhelming, but I'll
It's a
get
lot-
there.
It's a lot in, what you will, 27. What you'll do is you'll start to see it come together. It'll start to come together, like you'll see how going from, let's say, the listing folder to the under contract folder, how it all kind of flows from that point.
Yeah.